Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another episode of the Social Work Rants podcast. I'm your host, Bass Moreno. Saludos a todos, greetings, everybody, wherever you're watching this podcast from or listening to the podcast. Make sure you hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, type in the Social Work Rants podcast, and then hit the red subscribe button. Also, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at the Social Work Rants Podcast. That's all one word. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Social Work Rants. That's also one word. Follow the podcast on Facebook, aka Meta. Um, Type in the Social Work Rants Podcast. Hit the like button. Uh, Rate the podcast on Spotify. If you listen to Spotify, you can now rate the podcast, leave a rating, leave a comment on Apple Podcasts, leave a comment, leave a rating. Tune in, tap in. Thank you, everybody, for all the love and the support. Gracias a todos por su apoyo. I meant to drop this episode on Friday, but uh, this has been a crazy, crazy time as I record this episode on Sunday, June the 12th. I'm literally exactly 2 weeks away from my wedding day. Still no excuses. I want to be consistent with the podcast, and you guys been rocking with me, listening, and tuning in. So I'm very excited for my upcoming wedding. Exactly 2 weeks away from today, as of this recording. Today is the National Puerto Rican Day Parade. Saludos a todos los boricuas. To all my fellow Puerto Ricans, shout out to you. Um, it's the first time in 2 years that the parades that people are actually marching to the parade with the pandemic that we are still in. So it was great to see the parade on online and see people marching and showing their pride. Um, Even though America, the country, likes to pimp out Puerto Rico every time, every chance they get. It's been going on for generations. So, but we still have our culture, we still have our music, our food, our pride. Um, and shout out to everybody. It's also Pride Month, so happy Pride Month to those who celebrate. I know there's parades going on throughout the country, throughout the world. So, and you are still right of fighting for your rights as well. When we have states like Florida passing laws that you can't say gay and all this other BS that's happening. So there's always a lot of stuff going on in the world, and I'll do my best to try to tap into what's going on or what you guys need to know about or talk about that other podcasts are not talking about. So this week's episode is all about termination with clients. Uh, this is my last full week uh, in the school. In the school, um, my my kiddos I work with, their last day is this coming Tuesday. I am very excited to for this for Tuesday to come. My last day is this Friday the 17th, and I'll have 2 weeks of doing a whole lot of nothing in terms of work, so I could fully concentrate on my last couple of days for the wedding. And there's my book. This episode is brought to you by Bad City Entertainment, your home for holistic online uh, self care, focusing on poetry and virtual Zumba classes with the upcoming short poetry book, Triumph Through Pain: How to Maximize Your Full Potential During Hard Times, coming this summer. I'm still working out the kinks for the book, and I'm hoping to release it very, very soon, and also be not only selling it online, but also looking to do some vendors and sell the book in person as well. So, with that being said, termination this week with the kiddos. Um, this past Friday was a fourth grade graduation that I witnessed, and seeing the kids that I work with graduate, was very proud of them. Let them know that I was proud of them. Kids that I've gotten to know, seeing them graduate, definitely after two, especially after the pandemic that we still in, and letting them know like, hey, like you went through a whole pandemic, virtual learning through Zoom, which I'm sure it sucked, and here you are graduating. And also for my kindergartners, I spent a lot of time on the podcast talking about the kindergartners of what I've seen, their behavior, their adjustment or lack of adjustment in school this year, and to see the kindergartners also graduate this year um, is a big deal. Letting them know that I'm proud of them, and sky's the limit as the kindergartners go to first grade and be big boys and big girls. And for my fourth graders who's graduating, going to middle school. The school district I'm in, the middle school starts the fifth grade. So very, very happy for them. And talk about the whole process of termination, letting kids know, like, hey, like, it's going to be our last week together. You know, did you get anything out of the counseling with me, or what did you guys learn? How do you feel about being out last week? Some of the kids are just like whatever. Other kids is like, we're gonna miss you, Mr. Bass. Just to kind of letting me know what they learned about coping skills, or keeping their hands to themselves. Behave, about behavior, how to deal with others, things of that nature. So kind of like a gamut. Or they're excited to graduate, and a couple of my fourth graders were didn't even want to talk about middle school. Like they're like nervous, don't know what to feel, how to feel, what to say. They just they all they know is that they're going to miss their friends during the summer, and that's what they're focused on, and not really see or have the insight into graduating, and how big of a big deal that actually is. So um, and I know, like, in grad school, I don't know about grad school now, but I remember in grad school, termination was talked about, but not really like a whole like gamut of just talking about termination, and with different clients, different populations. Each sort of termination is different. I haven't terminated with children under 18 in years. So to really get like a good gamut of like, are you excited for the next grade? I had one kid who was like very ecstatic. A kid loved school. He was sad that school was ending. To another kid's like, you know, my kids, my two kids, they were kind of excited to for school to be over, and how are they going to miss their friends. But having not really social work school, not really talk about how to terminate with clients with different ages, different populations. And like I said, everybody is different. I've had to do terminations because working in an outpatient clinic was being laid off, and we had to transfer their cases over to another mental health clinic. Or a lot of times we do terminations because we're resigning, or we're resigning because we're moving, we're resigning because we got a better paying job, or sometimes you just being fired from a job, or things that um, that nature, and we don't have a chance to terminate with a client. So, um, there's different reasons for why we terminate. It's important to have that conversation, especially for the new MSW students who just graduated, BSWs who just graduated, people who are in graduate school now getting into the field, to make sure that the topic of termination is properly discussed and ask questions, because terminating with a kindergartner is different than terminating with a teenager or young adult or somebody or a senior. So the process of termination, is the same for the most part, but just the way you explain it, talk talk to somebody, letting them know like, hey, like our last session's coming up in a few weeks, or this is going to be our last session, like kind of like break down and we got a couple weeks left together. Now, how do you feel? Or this gonna be our next week's gonna be our last week. Now, how do you feel? Or if you feel like somebody is still need of services, yeah, is it appropriate to terminate, and or person needs some more services? So that's important to talk about too. Luckily for me, the kids are pretty much good to go for the summer, and I could do what I need to do for the summer for me, get that much needed self care, some rest, um, and wedding season, get this my book out, going on vacation later this summer, in God's will. So I'm looking forward to what the summer brings, and whatever challenges I face. Uh, and I want all the social workers or the MSW students to make sure that we our licensed clinical social workers talk about the importance of termination and making sure that or the I's are dotted, and T's are crossed in terms of making sure that we are doing terminations correctly, having those conversations. Terminations should be discussed during the first couple sessions of treatment. Like, hey, like a lot of the services that we provide in social work are voluntary, so a client can decide to end treatment. Or, we work at some of us work at employers that services are mandated. So and we gotta let clients know like, hey, like you're mandated to do this, and let them know it might suck to do this, but you're mandated to do it. So just wanted to give a quick talk regarding termination process. My feelings with the kiddos, like I had a good time with the kids. I'm a miss some of the kids more than others. To be perfectly frank, I make no bones about it that I really had a tough time with some of the kiddos. I had a tough time with how the school do things, let things slide that shouldn't, that shouldn't. Just like if a kid does something, it needs to be consequences, and sometimes the schools fail to do that. So, um, and in terms like I had a couple instances that like some unethical things were happening. There's stuff that was happening that was against like my personal values that happened. So kids need to learn consequences. They do something uh, that they shouldn't be doing. They need some consequence needs to happen. They can't come to school. They do something one day and then the next day come to school like nothing happened. That's not to me that's not cool. You're not teaching the kids like actions have a consequence. So um, termination, seeing the kids, saying goodbye to the kids, and like I said, like a lot of them are good kids, and I see a lot of the systemic the racism that's happened, how the pandemic has affected many families, and I've seen it this year. The pandemic has really affected the way the kids learn. Um, a lot of these kids are like 1 year, 2 years behind in what they need to, not only just academics, but also social and emotional. And I hope the education system here in the U.S. does um, a better job for next year. They'll talk about social and emotional learning, and that trainings are happening before the start of the next school year throughout the summer. Talk about social emotional learning. Definitely some dance breaks, some more movement in during the school day needs to happen. I think gym class needs to be more prevalent because kids have a whole lot of energy and they need to burn it off so that they can learn and concentrate. Um, that's only part of the issue. It's just a lot going on with the education system. So that being said, terminating, uh, I feel good terminating with my kiddos. Some of those is like bye, like peace, like thanks, like I'm out. So I had a whole gamut, like from like I'm gonna miss you, Mr. Bass, to like peace, and just like that, like that's it. Like we spent like months together just to like barely a goodbye. So I go from one extreme to another. It was a definitely good learning experience working with the kids in the school system, and how wherever you work at in terms of terminating, just start. As soon as you open the case, you start talking about it. Like I said, a lot of stuff where we work at, especially in nonprofits, is voluntary services. So let uh, give the clients the empowerment, like, hey, like this is your treatment, and you could end the treatment you know, when you feel like it, and if it as long as it is appropriate and you're not feel like hurting yourself, hurting somebody else, and you as a clinician make that determination whether it be a good time to terminate with a client or not, and discuss the termination process. So um, that's really it for this week. I wanted to get that off my chest. And again, be on the lookout for my book, Triumph Through Pain: How to Maximize Your Full Potential During Hard Times, coming up real soon. More details are coming. Uh, and you can follow Bat City Entertainment LLC on Instagram for updates on the upcoming book, and also Bat City Entertainment on TikTok for more info regarding the release of the book. Until next time, peace, y'all.